Today we're going to learn about third declension adjectives. And as you can see here, third declension adjectives are broken up into three different groups. Type 1 third declension adjectives are also called one termination adjectives. And, as in with par, paris, you're given the nominative and the genitive of the word. There are also two termination adjectives like omnis, omne, and here you're given the form for the masculine and the feminine, as well as a form for the neuter. And finally, there are three termination third declension adjectives like celer, celeris, celere. And here you're given a masculine, a feminine, and a neuter stem. Let's start with one termination adjectives, and we'll use par, paris as our paradigm word. Remember, the nominative across all genders is going to be par, our first termination that we're given. And the second term we're given, paris, is going to be our genitive across all genders. And as always, we go to that genitive to get our stem for the entire word. And to this stem we're going to add endings that look very similar to third declension noun endings with a few exceptions. Note that the ablative singular will end in an I instead of an E, that the genitive plural will end in eum instead of just and that the accusative plural ends in is instead of ace. Also note that in the neuter declension, the nominative and accusative ending is ia and not just a. So pay close attention to these parts. And as always with the neuter, remember that the nominative and the accusative are going to be exactly the same. Moving on to our two termination adjectives, we're going to use omnis, omne as our paradigm word. And remember that first term, omnis, is going to tell you the nominative of the masculine and the feminine. And omne is going to tell you the nominative of the neuter. We're going to use omnis as the genitive for all of these, and we're still going to go to the genitive to get our stem. So our stem for this whole declension is omn. And we're going to add the same exact endings that we added to our one termination third declension adjectives. And they differ from the third declension nouns in the same exact ways as the one termination adjectives. And as always, in the neuter, the nominative and the accusative repeat. Now let's work with three termination adjectives. Here we're going to use acer, acris, acre. For our nominatives, remember that first termination gives us the masculine nominative, the second term, acris, gives us the feminine nominative, and the third term, acre, gives us the neuter nominative. And remember, when we're getting stems of adjectives, when they're three-part adjectives, we'll always go to that feminine form and drop off the is. Also, that feminine form will be the same as your genitive, so you can also go there and drop off the is if you wish. The end is the same. Your stem is going to be acr. And to this stem, we're going to add the same exact endings. And these endings differ from third declension noun endings in the same way as first one and two termination adjectives do. And once again, in the neuter, the nominative and the accusative repeat. So really, even though there are three types of third declension adjectives, you only have to memorize one set of endings because they work across the entire three. So, let's talk about forming third declension adverbs. And there's a few steps to this. The first being that you find the stem of your adjective. And remember, the stem always comes from the genitive. So you go to the genitive and you drop off your is. Next, you add the ending iter to the stem. And it is truly that easy. Now, if you're interested in how this came along, iter is the ablative of the word way in Latin, or road, and this is kind of like by the road of evenness, or whatever adjective you wish to use. Now let's practice a little with our grammar in action. Here you're given three nouns on the left in various cases, and next to them, three adjectives. Ingens, ingentis, which is a one termination adjective, similis, simile, which is a two termination adjective, and celer, celeris, celere, which is a three termination adjective. And what I'd like you to do is change them so they properly modify the noun given. This will be a good time to pause the recording and give yourself time to work. Alright, let's start with timore. Now remember, timore is masculine, it is ablative, and it is singular. Therefore, we want it to be modified by ingenti, which is the masculine ablative singular form of ingens, ingentis. Now let's work with opida, number 2. Now remember that opida is neuter, it is nominative or accusative, and it is plural. So we're going to use similia, which is also neuter, nominative or accusative, and plural. And finally, we have memoriarum, which is, of course, feminine, genitive, and plural. So we're going to modify that with colerium, which is also feminine, genitive, and plural. Now let's talk about our takeaways. There's really three things that you need to know. You need to remember that there are three types of third declension adjectives. One termination, which give you the nominative and the genitive across all genders. Two terminations, which give you a masculine and feminine nominative and a neuter nominative. And three terminations, which give you a masculine, feminine, and neuter nominative separately. And remember, the endings for these are all the same, and you need to memorize those as well. And also, there are two steps for finding your third declension adverbs, and that is going to the genitive, dropping is, and adding iter.